What's up, guys? Welcome into Good Morning Lambeau. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. You could text us on the Ticket King text line, 865-658-5824. We're flying solo this morning. Tim's on assignment, taking care of some stuff. Emilio's out working on the grind. He may join us shortly, but we'll probably be solo for the entirety of this show. Hope everybody is having a great a Thursday morning here, a little bit rainy in Tennessee, but the weather's turning cooler. It's supposed to be I think down in the 20s a little later in the week, which is exciting for me. I'm a big cold weather person, so really, really jacked up about that. So got a lot of stuff to talk about as we're getting closer to Packers-Bears on Sunday at 12 noon Central there in Chicago. Going to be a fun game to watch, I think. You're getting more and more injury report updates coming out of Chicago, as we'll mention here in a second. They've got a key player that looks like he's going to be missing. We got a number of different directions we can go in this show today. I got all kinds of stuff queued up. We'll just kind of go rapid fire. We'll definitely keep an eye on the chat as much as we can. Flying solo, you know how that goes. So we'll jump right into the chat right off the bat here. Jake G126, morning, healing up from the surgery Tuesday. That's great to hear, Jake. Said now I get to tune into this terrible show and talk some ball. Don't forget to hit that like button. Appreciate you, pal. And he did throw in the chat that he's no jalapeno poppers for breakfast today. Went with the scrambled eggs. What a weird choice, Jake. What a weird choice. We're on our second cup of coffee here. We get the diesel flowing. And I don't know, man. There's just something about waking up on a fall morning, a little chilly outside, grabbing a cup of coffee and talking a little ball, diving into some of the analytics and some of the matchups that you may see on Sunday, and really keeping up with the NFL as a whole around the entire league. I don't know how you guys feel. Some people get really, really amped up for, the playoffs and obviously the Super Bowl push and all that. And I think it's great. I think it's high stakes. It's high energy, all those things that you hear. But for me, what I really enjoy is like the middle of the season when you've got the storylines that have kind of already unfolded. And you see some teams overperforming, some teams underperforming. You got teams that get banged up with injuries, much like we seen way back in the day in 2010 when the Packers won the Super Bowl. It's like, how do you patch that together? How do you adjust your scheme to fit the other people who are filling in? You're looking to accentuate the positives of your team, and you're trying to hide all the negatives. I love that aspect of football personally. So when we get to the middle of the year, this is my bread and butter. I love it. Starts to turn colder, get a little snow flying at Lambeau Field. The weather becomes more of a factor, and typically the tougher team will prevail. So that's what I really love about the NFL. Holmes in the chat says Dallas, talking about the Dallas Cowboys, is a burn barrel. Yeah, it's pretty ugly down in D right now, man. It's interesting, too, because like what Jake says here, yeah, Dallas is going to crash and burn the rest of the season. It sure feels that way. I don't see without Dak them turning around with Cooper Rush. And then Jake went on to say, Jerry did so little to improve that squad this year. I completely agree, and that was a big talking point. But also put yourself in Jerry's shoes for a second and the organization. You had 3 players that were up for contract. And they're really, to be quite honest, they're the 3 best players at their respective positions. So Dak Prescott, you got to make a decision. Are you signing him to a long-term deal or not? Now, hindsight, people are saying, oh, that's a horrible deal. I don't agree with that. Dak was a top 3 quarterback last year. He's either the guy or he isn't. And once you make that decision that he is, you got to pay what the market calls for it. It's just the same thing with Jordan Love. They had to make a call. He was playing a little bit of hardball, holding out, right? He wanted his deal. And you got to ask yourself, is he worthy of top 5 quarterback money? And really what that question is, in my opinion, is he worthy of top 10 quarterback money? And I think we would all agree that answer was yes coming into this season. Now, if Jordan doesn't pan out long term, it won't be the first time that's happened in the NFL. So that's why the negotiations are so tough up front, and you're trying to keep yourself in a position where, hey, yeah, you got to kind of bite the bullet. You signed a player that you didn't want. And no way am I saying this is what it is with Jordan. I think Jordan's the guy. That's my personal stance right now. But when that decision's on the table, you got to make a decision, yes or no. If it's no, then you try to get as much capital for him as possible because other teams may value him or overvalue him. And we're talking Dak here specifically. Or if it's yes, you got to pay what the market is. It's that simple, right? So, with Dak, they made the decision, okay, Dak's the guy. Let's sign him. Let's move forward with him. Got it. The next one would have been CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. You guys know it's not even close. I would have focused on Micah Parsons before CeeDee Lamb. Now, the issue there is CeeDee Lamb was holding out. Micah wasn't, to the best of my knowledge. So they made the decision, all right, let's get the CeeDee Lamb deal done. And the old Bill Walsh school of thinking is really simple. The Bill Walsh school of thinking is, okay, you don't put receiver, you don't go all out on receiver until you've got every other piece put in place. Going into the offseason, did Dallas think they had every piece? I think many people did. You know, they were one of the best regular season teams the entire year last year. So now us looking at how they've performed this year, I think there's a little bit of that disease of me that's set in, right? You had 3 players that wanted paid. The one who didn't get paid is kind of taking side shots at the head coach now. So the fact that you didn't pay Micah Parsons, who I don't think there's anybody who thinks Micah Parsons isn't a top 5 edge defender in the league. And you guys correct me if you disagree in the chat, but you know, I don't see Micah Parsons as not being worthy of top edge defender money. That's a position of tier 1 importance, right? I would have said, CD, listen, bub, we want you in here, but it's got to make a lot of sense for us to re-sign you. And I would have made sure Micah Parsons got done. Now, you got Dak done. If you got Micah done, then you focus on CD. I would have done it in that order. And that's where Jerry Jones really screwed up, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's interesting. It really is. But going into the offseason, I didn't look at Dallas and go, man, they need to improve this. They need to improve that. They need to improve this. I looked at it from, all right, the structure. What is your blueprint to putting together your team? What Bill Belichick calls modeling the roster. What is your model? It doesn't feel like they got a 3-tech, right? They got one of the best edge defenders in the league. So those are your 2 top-tier positions on defense, in my opinion. You got your quarterback. You think and feel pretty comfortable that Dak Prescott is your quarterback. So you got that locked up. Who is their tackle, their left tackle protecting the blind side? I would have keyed in on that. And I would have made sure that I would have spent the offseason trying to get that 3-tech. And, you know, Michael Lombardi says it best. Everybody thinks they got a 3-tech, and there's very few teams in the league that has a true 3-tech, right? Like, in my opinion right now, the Packers don't have a 3-tech. And Jeff Hafley's doing a hell of a job of patching that together. Now, many people say, I think Kenny is. I don't think Kenny's a bad player. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Kenny Clark's a bad player. I'm just simply saying he is not a top 5 3-tech in the game. He's not. I'm sorry. And he's getting paid like a top 3 one. So that's kind of how I see it. And it doesn't mean I'm right and anybody else is wrong. It's just when I'm modeling a roster, that's kind of how I look at it. So I don't know if that makes sense or not. Let's see here. Christian, great point. They drafted Gotton in round 1. So they went for – Gotton was a tackle, right? I think he was one of those versatile guys, but I had him listed as a tackle. Let's see where I had Gotton at, because I think he was on the list for the Packers. Yeah, I had him lit up in the yellow for the Packers. So he was one of just like about 6 players in the draft that I felt like the Packers are probably going to key in on him. He just kind of fit some of the mold that they looked for. But as far as Gotton at offensive tackle, I had him as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it sounds like Jerry, he was the best player available on their board according to their draft grades. They go out and grab him and say, all right, let's try to shore up the tackle position. That sounds like the route they went. Now, I can't remember who was on the board as far as a 3-tech when they drafted. But in my opinion, the best 3-techs in this past draft were Byron Murphy, Jerzon Newton, and Tavondre Sweat. Many people looked at him as a nose, but as you can see, it seems like early in the year at least, he was getting some pressure on the quarterback. So you could kind of bend the rules there a little bit and go, hey, let's get him as an interior defensive lineman. And then the other one was Jenkins, right? Yeah, was Cullen Jenkins' nephew, Chris Jenkins. So, yeah, it's interesting. Again, I don't want this turned into a Dallas Cowboy podcast. They bring it up in the chat, so we would hit on it real quick. But we'll just kind of stamp this as, modeling the roster talk, right? And that's really conversation for the offseason. But it's cool to look at it in real time and see where teams are struggling in that sense, if that makes sense. So, all right, let's see here. Holmes in the chat. Parsons is good, but I don't think the players have belief in the locker room. I think Mike is gone next year. It feels like a rebuild. Clay White is a 3-tech. No. Yeah, so First thing, Mike, I think he's gone too, man. I don't see a situation where he stays. Sometimes the players love the coach, and that'll buy him another year or two. You get like a slight extension. But when Micah said that about Mike, it's like, oh, man, that's I think the writing's on the wall. Now, as far as Wyatt being a 3-tech, Wyatt is built to be a 3-tech. The problem is, when has Wyatt dominated a game both in the run and the pass? Right, and that's what we mean by a true 3-tech. Wyatt I think he's. I don't want to oversell Devonte Wyatt, but I feel comfortable saying he's a great pass rusher. You kind of got like good, very good, great, and then elite. He's probably somewhere between very good and great as a pass rusher. As a run defender, he's average, I think. That's just me personally. Now, PFF would agree with that. That's PFF. It doesn't make it right. But the big knock on Devonte Wyatt and all of our defensive tackles going into this offseason that we talked about was run defense. And you go, okay, well, it's the scheme. It can be a little bit of the scheme. It can. But when you're toward the top of the league in missed tackle, blown tackle percentage rate, not a good look, right? And then on top of that, aside from the tackle grade on PFF, your run defense grade is extremely low. And then you turn on the tape and you don't see them doing what a Christian Wilkins does or what a Quentin Williams does. That's what I'm talking about, a true 3-tech. Chris Jones can play all over the line, but throw him in a 3-tech, they're going to hit him with a double team, and he's still going to fight through that double team and make plays in the run. That's Chris Jones. It's one of the reasons it hardly ever gets talked about with Kansas City. It's all about Mahomes and Kelsey. But that defense and what Chris Jones has been able to do from the 3-tech and that versatility across the line is the reason that defense is so damn good under Spags. So, I'm trying to think of some of the other good 3-techs across the league. Matter of fact, this is off cuff, but since you guys want to kind of talk a little roster building, let's go in and I'm going to jump on the players real quick. Let's go defensive tackle or interior defender. And we're just going to use PFF as a quick little benchmark. Again, it's not everything, but let's just take a quick look at some of the top 3-techs according to PFF. I'll tell you if I agree or disagree if I've got the information. This is perfect. Cam Hayward, true 3-tech. Imagine if Cam Hayward was in the middle of this Packers defense. You understand what I'm saying? Dexter Lawrence, another one from the Giants, just an absolute dog, 89.8. First of all, Cam Hayward, 90.1. Dexter Lawrence, 89.8. Chris Jones, 89.7. Calais Campbell, he's back up to an 84. That dude's like 110 years old. That's wild. There's McNeil for the Lions. You want to know why the Lions defense has held up pretty well this year? 81 in the middle. DeForest Buckner for the Colts. Travis Jones. See, now you're getting out of that. Like, I don't know if they're a true, 75 and above, you're probably about your cutoff because Jalen Carter, he's a stud. I mean, we've seen enough tape of him to know that he can play at an extremely high level, just maybe need to be a little more consistent. But those top 3 or 5 guys, and again, it's not like they're growing on trees, right? They're not falling from the sky. There's usually about 5 in the league that are dominant. And that's what I mean by you need a true 3-tech. And, like this past draft, you're a little bit out of range to get one, right? Now, the Packers went a different route the year before getting LV in. That's a position that's just as important as 3-tech. I would prioritize 3-tech over edge, but I understand why they went that route. And they knew the writing was on the wall for Preston Smith to eventually leave, right? So that's kind of the route they took there. But hopefully that answers your question there. Wyatt is built like a 3-tech. They play him at a 3-tech. He's just not great against stopping the run. And it doesn't mean that Wyatt's a bad football player. It doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. The same thing with Kenny Clark. Like, we're seeing a lot of touch spies with these guys. Notice we haven't called 195 touch spy. You notice that? Like, I'm not saying the Packers haven't ran that, but when we've done chalk talk all season long, you haven't heard us say that, right? And the reason being is that's one of the guys that they're turning loose. And you ask yourself, okay, why is that? Why are they not having him eat the double team? Well, the offense is dictating where the double team is to a certain extent, but also the Packers are choosing to line one person up in a 1-tech. They feel like Kenny is best suited to take on that double team, so they'll put him in the 1-tech. You guys remember hearing everybody say Kenny's years were wasted because he was playing nose? He's playing nose tackle. They're wasting him. And I kept saying, nah, he played 3 and 5-tech. Like, you can see it all over the tape. Some people just regurgitate what they hear certain people talk about and they don't go fact check it themselves. He played a ton of 3-tech last year, right? This year, they've moved him primarily to 1-tech. Isn't it ironic? We go to a 4-3, and now he's actually playing nose the majority of the time. And they'll move him around from time to time, too, depending on the matchups they're trying to exploit. But, yeah, that's the way I see it, though, as far as Wyatt. He's built like a 3-tech, supposed to be a 3-tech, but unless you're one of those guys in this top 5 list here, Cam Hayward, Dexter Lawrence, Chris Jones, Calais Campbell, and I'd really probably cut it off right there as far as like elite. And I probably wouldn't even put Calais Campbell in there because he is a little older, a little longer in the tooth, and it's probably just between those top 3 guys, Hayward, Lawrence, and Jones. But you wouldn't consider Wyatt on that level, right? And it has nothing to do with the touch spy in his sense. Now, when you talk about Kenny, yeah, but again, last year, what was the problem with Kenny Clark? Missed tackles, right? He was constantly missing tackles. He would get in the backfield from time to time, and he'd miss tackles. Guys, that's a vital part of run defense, right? Let's see what Emilio said here in the chat. It says, Cowboys lost a lot of depth when Quinn left and brought players to wash with him. All right, wash with that sounds bad, Emilio. I don't know about that, man. Specify there if you want, unless you're just saying it was kind of a push. Holmes in the chat, why can't Wyatt play the run better? He's a monster. The thing that you notice, he's real effective at getting into the backfield, and that's half the battle, right? But it's like he's so focused on that, and he plays a little bit out of control. Like his rookie year, I was team Devonte Wyatt on that draft pick. He was like in the top 3 of overall talent on my draft board when they took him. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And many of the talking heads on Twitter were like, he's too old. The Packers will never draft him. And obviously that proved to be to not be true, right? But he would play reckless his rookie year. And what I mean by that is he'd be working to get around it was just tunnel vision. I'm going to beat the guy in front of me. And he would push himself into other guys' rush lanes and hit them and knock them off. And now you've got 3 guys blocking 2, and the pass rush is completely ruined. You would see that over and over and over. And then once they've got that cleaned up where he plays a little more in the phone booth within his pass rush assignment, now you're seeing, and you've seen it last year too, when he's in the backfield, he's just not, as Mike Wall says, how you arrive at confrontation determines how you handle confrontation. And what that means is if you arrive at confrontation with one leg in front of the other and you're, off balance after doing a rip move and now you're trying to reach across your body to grab a tackle, you're not going to make that tackle. At the linebacker position, it's the same thing. And Mike Wall specifically talking about from an offensive line standpoint, how you arrive at that contact determines how you handle that contact, right? It's not just you've got the athletic ability to get to the next level and block on a duo call. It's when you get there, do you have a strong base? Are you good center? Are you low enough? Are you the low man? Is there good pad level? Where's your hand placement? If you're playing out of control, it doesn't matter how athletic you are. You're not gonna be able to finish the play with someone who's considered an absolute technician. Josh Myers, first person that comes to mind on the offensive line, right? He's a physical freak. He's RAS through the roof. He's got the athletic ability to get to the next level, but when he gets there, many times he's kind of out of control. So that's just kind of how I see it. Anthony in the chat, Aaron Donald was the prototypical 3-tech man. Amen. Aaron Donald was that dude. He could line up anywhere, much like Chris Jones. But if you put him in a 3-tech, what you force now, think about this, guys. Put yourself in the offense's shoes and handle an Aaron Donald. Your protection, he's such a good football player. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt in my mind, that you're always going to set the protection to Aaron Donald, right? So when you put someone in a 1-tech, most of the time what a 1-tech is, you're between the center and the guard. That's going to, by default, give you a double team block. Well, if you take your best defensive lineman and you put him in a 3-tech, right? Now what you're saying is you've got to make a decision as an offense. Are you going to double team the 3-tech or are you going to double team the 1? And if the answer is yes to both, then you got to keep extra men on protection. And if that's the case, that means you have less guys going out in the route. So when you've got a true 3-tech like Aaron Donald, and that's what we talk about, a true 3-tech, it's why it's more important than a 1-tech, is now you're forcing them to shade or fade, however you want to fan the protection to the 3-tech side, and now you're creating 2 one-on-one matchups in a normal 5-man protection. That makes sense. So, yeah, nail on the head there, Anthony. Aaron Donald, absolute dog, man. Emilio said Washington, when Quinn left to take the head coach job, he brought a bunch of Cowboys depth players with him. Got it. Yeah, that's very true. Dan Quinn, players coach, they absolutely loved him. And that's the beautiful thing about the NFL. It also sucks about the NFL when it happens to your team. But when these coaches leave, it's like this constant. That's something that's not talked about enough. When a head coach loses coordinators, you get a real good look at that head coach and just how damn good they are. Because if you're able to adjust consistently after losing people and still win ball games, man, that says a lot. Matt LaFleur's one that I think's done pretty darn good at it. But he loses Dan Quinn, his DC, and now some of those players, like Emilio said, they wanted to go play with Dan in Washington. Now you see Washington emerged as pretty much the front runner in that NFC East. You guys remember the conversation when it was, is Jerry Jones going to let Mike McCarthy go and basically promote Dan Quinn to head coach? You guys remember that? Well, he chose to stick with McCarthy. Me personally, I would have done the same thing. I'm not saying it's the right decision. Right now, it's not looking like the right decision. But him going to Washington, you got a little bit of newness there too. McCarthy had great success last year. Where did they win 13 games or something crazy? So it's not like McCarthy has just been horrible in Dallas. It's not been the case. It's just there's really unrealistic expectations in Dallas that if you don't win a Super Bowl, boy, Jerry Jones is breathing down your neck. And I think that in itself is the real problem. So let's see. Holmes says Donald played more one tech, I think. He was all over the place. It depended on the matchup that week. And when I say matchup, not necessarily like, okay, let's get him on a weak offensive lineman. It was more of a sense of protection. That team that week, do they like to just run with a 5-man protection? Do they typically like to run with 6? Do they like to run with 5 with a leak, meaning it's just a chip and get out in the route? Do they like to run with 7 with 2 leaks? And that would determine where they would put him, is the way I always remembered it. That was what was so awesome about in the short time that they got to play against each other. Elton Jenkins, when he went head-to-head with Aaron Donald, I remember one game specifically that I think it was before we were doing this podcast that they decided, let's let Elton just one-on-one with Aaron Donald, see if he can handle it. And he absolutely ate Aaron Donald's lunch. That's when Elton Jenkins was like, whoa, we got a dog here. Now, since the injury, he's taken a step back, in my opinion. But, yeah, he handled – I remember creating or seeing the meme on Twitter of Elton Jenkins sitting there. They photoshopped his head on a dad's body, and he's holding 2 kids. And the 2 kids, they put Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald on the kids' bodies. It was hilarious. But, yeah, so I think Donald was all over the place, much like Chris Jones. But in a 5-man protection, you want to put Aaron Donald, in my opinion, in a 3-tech. And that way they have to fan to that side. And now you've got a guard trying to block your nose, who typically are in a nickel formation. You would rather – it's like what they're doing with Kenny right now. Kenny is hands down your best defensive lineman. That's what they're saying when they put him in that 1-tech, because they're wanting him to fight through that double team, right, and draw that double team to him. Again, it's just – we're kind of talking in circles, but every week it's different. And it comes down to how good is their offensive line, what does the numbers show is their normal protection, and that will determine how you go approaching, like Chicago this week. Listen, their O-line's cheeks and their quarterback's holding the ball too long. I don't think they're going to put a whole lot of thought in how can we exploit this offensive line. It's probably going to be pretty vanilla, to be honest with you. And there's going to be some touch spine, and there's going to be knuckleheads on Twitter going, this guy, look, he can't get in the back. And it's like, you are not focused on the pass rush, bub. Watch how they're rushing the quarterback. They're going to look to catch Caleb after the first read. They're not looking to just pin their ears back and go get Caleb. It's not going to happen. I'm just telling you. It may happen if you jump up to a little bit of a lead, because then you can pin your ears back. But for the most part, what I think Jeff Hafley's going to do is kind of that, hey, start your pass rush, get your eyes in the back. As soon as his first read isn't open, if he drops them eyes like the tape's been showing that he has, then that's where you make your move, because the offensive lineman is trying to set to your pass rush move. They're not expecting you to lag. If you're lagging back, it throws them, and now all of a sudden Caleb tries to scramble up and out. You just shed that block and sack him. That's what a lot of teams are doing with Caleb right now. So, Holmes, I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you there. He says, great explanation, Clay. It's so hard to illustrate this stuff. And me and Emilio were talking last night. I'm going to start to use the Telestrator a little bit more. I'm going to try to get some basic screen grabs where we can kind of draw what we're talking about. It'd be real simple to do. We just get a little bit I don't know. I get so caught up mid-season with other things we're doing, and there's a lot on the plate right now. But as we do more and more morning shows, which next week we'll probably do 3 or 4 morning shows, hopefully. So we'll have more time to set that up. Jake in the chat says, yeah, they don't make them like Aaron Donald every day. You got that right, man. They're, like I said, they're not just growing on trees, for sure. Andy in the chat, good morning from Freeport, Illinois. Do you think we're in for a surprise loss this week for the Pack? Appreciate you swinging through, Andy. It's possible, right? I wouldn't put my money on it. I think the betting line it opened at 6.5. Many people were surprised it wasn't more. It actually came down to 5.5 now. But you got to be real careful when you're gambling with the Bears involved, because their fan base bets on their team. I mean, I remember Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky was the betting favorite to win MVP one year, guys, and it didn't last all season. But that's because the Chicago fans. You see it. Go to Twitter and type in Mitch Trubisky, and you're going to see a lot of negative. But if the further you go back, they thought he was the second damn coming of Joe Montana. Let me tell you, right? Same thing with Justin Fields until it wasn't. Until the last hour, oh nope, he's gone, he's done, right? And then the same thing with obviously here with Caleb Williams. We got Caleb Williams now. Adam Rank blocked me on Twitter. Absolutely hilarious. I love how that dude talks trash to Packer fans. You talk it back, and he runs like the coward that he is. But, this team is going to be really good this year, and they're all hopped up in a national. You guys remember, there's never been a team that's better prepared or better built for a rookie quarterback. That was the theme all offseason. As soon as they drafted Caleb Williams, it was, oh, my God. We've never seen a team assembled this good for a rookie quarterback. And they come out and just fall absolutely on their face. And here's newsflash. Caleb Williams isn't at the top of that list as problems for that team. That's what's crazy. So now it's shifted to, well, what do you expect? Look at the team they put around him. It's like, whoa. What happened to that energy in the offseason when you said this was the dream team built around him? It's funny how that works. Randy Cleavers with the super chat. Appreciate you, buddy. He says, we better boat race the Bears. Randy, I got some advice, Bubba. It may happen. Right? I hope it does. I hope we beat them by 40. But that mindset, man, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed. It's unrealistic, in my opinion. And everybody do what you want. Fan how you want to fan. It's unrealistic to convince yourself that you're going to boat race anybody in the NFL. It just is. I mean, the spread is now moved to 5.5, right? Every week this season, not every week, multiple weeks this season, and not you, Randy. I'm just saying people in general. It was, oh, yeah, we're going to kill. We can crush them. We can beat them. And I'm going, bro, the spread's like 2.5. Are we saying that Vegas doesn't know what the hell they're talking about? And we do? You know what I'm saying? So I try not to look at the game that way. Like, hey, man, we better beat the crap out of them. That's, to me, it's miserable to fan like that. And maybe some people find joy in it. That's cool. It's just not me. I love listening to Packernet After Dark. And after the game, people call in, and I like listening to that because it gives you kind of a feel for the Packernet listeners and how they're approaching, after the game. 2 years ago, it was exactly kind of like what Randy said here, man. If we don't boat race somebody, I'm going to be extremely disappointed type approach, right? Now, though, holy cow, like it's you still get some of that, but for the most part, it's more along the lines of here's why it didn't happen that way, right? It just seems like listeners have really kind of rose to that. Hey, all right, we're starting to understand you shouldn't boat race anybody in the National Football League. It's just the way the league's built, right? Now, there's a couple people that no matter what happens, they're going to call in and be negative. They're always going to be negative, and they just like to hear themselves cuss on the show. And I love that Ryan checks them when it happens, but it's some people, they choose to be miserable, Now, Randy, your comment here, we better boat race the Bears. That better be how the coaching staff's looking at to a certain extent. The position coaches should be looking at like, we need to go out and dominate, right? There's no reason why we can't beat this team by 20 points. That doesn't mean you overlook them. It means you don't take your foot off the pedal. You don't take your foot off the gas. You just keep trucking along. If you're up by 40, keep your foot on their throat type thing, right? I kind of feel like that's what Randy's saying. Not I'm going to be miserable if we don't boat race them. So, but again, I don't expect to boat race anybody in the NFL. I just want to make that clear. But yeah, thank you so much for the super chat, Randy. You are the man, bub. Let's see what else we got in the chat real quick. I didn't expect to just lean on the chat all show, but you know what? If we can keep up, this is cool. I like it. Let's see here. Jake in the chat. I will say the first Packers-Bears game I went to at Lambeau is when Aaron Rodgers threw 6 touchdowns in the first half. That is absolutely awesome. That's good stuff. First Packers-Bears game I went to was back in like 2000. It was either 2003 or 2004, and it was the alumni game. And yeah, that's I talk about it all the time. Drove right down the field, marched it right down the field. It was, Brett Favre heading into Amon Green. We go right down, get inside the 5. Somebody strips the ball out of Amon's hands and takes it all the way back. It was just like, oh man. But still an awesome experience. But that was back when the Bears were actually competing, for sure. Let's see, your number one Packer fan. The Pack keeps playing target practice with their feet. It will be a long day if the Packers. Yeah, amen. Amen, buddy. Got a lot of stuff to clean up here. Andy Watkins in the chat says, I love this channel. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you, Andy. We appreciate you, pal. Thanks for swinging through, man. Yeah, Holmes, that was a big conversation last night. Caleb told the punter his services would not be needed this season. LOL. It's absolutely hilarious, man. Yeah, iRock in the chat. Make sure to like the stream. Go, Pat, go. Thank you, iRock. Yeah, if you guys would just take a quick second, hit that like button. One of the reasons why our view count isn't up as much is because I don't say that enough. Some people cut little ads in between saying, hey, hit like, subscribe, this and that. I don't want to hound people with it, So I try to stay away from that stuff, but I got to accept the fact that it's part of the gig. But let's see here. Randy Cleavers, think we will get Cooper instead of Walker this week. We're going to get them both. I have no reason to believe until they show me on Sunday that Quay isn't linebacker 1. And when I say the mock, it means he would be the only linebacker on the field in a dime set where there's only one linebacker. Have no reason to believe that that's not the case. Do I want Cooper to be linebacker 1? Absolutely, I do. But the reality is you're going to be in nickel a lot. Matter of fact, I've got the personnel chart here. Let me pop it up on the screen for y'all, and we'll take a quick look and see what defense we'll be in, because essentially you're going to be matching the defense with their personnel, right? That's the name of the game in the NFL. This is the Bears personnel here for this year. And if you look at the rate, that's the rate in which they play those specific personnel groupings. And what personnel means is you see right here, this number, if I can get there we go. This number right here is 11 personnel. That stands for 1 running back, 1 tight end, which equals 3 wide receiver sets. And the reason that's important, 3 wide receiver sets, the Packers are going to bring their nickel 4-2-5 on the field, right? And whether it's a big nickel or just a traditional nickel, what it means is 5 DBs and only 2 linebackers. And that's where I'm taking it back to Randy's question here. You think Cooper will get Cooper instead of Walker this week. You're going to get them both in that nickel. Now, what's interesting is it's not just Walker and Cooper all the time. There's actually been a healthy rotation of Isaiah McDuffie and Cooper, Eric Wilson, and like that. I'm almost to the point now, honestly, that I would much rather see Eric Wilson and Edgerrin Cooper as our nickel backers. And what I mean by that, you're still going to do your rotation, right? Just flip the rotation numbers. Give Cooper the bulk of the linebacker snaps. Give Eric Wilson the second highest number, then Quay, then McDuffie. That's the way I would do it. Now, I don't know more than this coaching staff. I don't know this much of what the coaching staff knows. So there's a reason they keep putting Quay out there, right? So I've got to reserve my opinion to, hey, listen, they've forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. But when people complain and say, hey, it needs to be Cooper out there instead of Quay, it needs to be Wilson out there instead of Quay, I can't disagree with you either, because the tape suggests it should be. So anyway, they're in 11 personnel 68.4% of the time. They're in 12 personnel 22.4% of the time. They're in 13 personnel 3.3% of the time. That's probably goal line situations for the most part. So the moral of the story is 68.4% of the snaps, if we go off the model that they've done all year long, and it's a pretty damn healthy sample size, right? We're however many games in, 9, 10 games in for some teams. Expect to be in nickel 68% of the time is what you're looking at. So probably somewhere between 65 to 70% of the time, you're going to be in your nickel 4-2-5. And then just 22% of the time, so let's say between 20 and 25% of the snaps on Sunday, you're going to be in your base 4-3. We've been playing a lot of 4-3 over, meaning the 3-tech is to the strong side, the 1-tech is on the weak side of the formation, opposite the tight end. So what you'll probably see here is a whole bunch of nickel. I was looking if we had any 0-1 sets. You really don't see a whole lot of 0-1 sets. To be honest with you, I don't see any. Matter of fact, I see 10, I see 0-2. So occasionally they'll not even. Okay. So that's probably their empty set. They like to put tight ends out there. Sounds like. So yeah, it's going to be majority nickel and then 4-3. That's what you're going to end up having. So to answer your question, Randy, I expect Quay to be out there the majority of the snaps until we see otherwise. Now, maybe the bye week was a transition period and they go, all right, now it's time to march him out there, right? Maybe that's the case. That I'd be totally on board with it if that was the case. So let's see here. Like Holmes said, not according to Halfley, Randy. Right? Exactly. I wouldn't expect it. Karma hurts Caleb. It sure don't help. If you believe in karma, what goes around comes around. Or if you're a believer like me, whatsoever a man sows, that too he shall also reap. When you draw attention to yourself, another saying from the book, my favorite book on the face of the earth, it says, pride cometh before the fall. Caleb comes across like that. And then when things go wrong, he doesn't say, okay, how do I pick my teammates up? He immediately goes into woe is me mode. It's all over college. Again, people can be disappointed in Caleb in Chicago. What I'm not going to allow people to be is to act surprised, because this was all over the college tape. Just the body language, the pouting, the climbing in his mom's arms, the FUND on his fingernails, disrespecting the opponent. And it's like, oh, come on, Clayton, we're all grown here. It ain't a big deal. It is a big deal because you're giving extra bulletin board material to the other team when you do that. Let me get a sip here. So think of it this way too. Xavier McKinney, what he said about DJ Moore. Some will go, that's bulletin board material. He's playing chess, not checkers. Think about what he actually said. He said that about DJ Moore and came to Caleb Williams' defense. You remember the clip we played? And I didn't really catch it till this morning. It's like, I think I know what he's doing there. He basically said, Caleb's going to be fine. Caleb's a good quarterback, blah, blah, blah. And then in another part of his interview or whatever, he says, DJ Moore walked off the field on his guy. That's trash, essentially, right? So think about it. What's been the big storyline this week? That some players went to the coaching staff and said they wanted Caleb benched, right? And to the best of my knowledge, they're not benching Caleb. Now, he might be on a short leash. Who do you think was involved with those players? You guys remember earlier in the year when DJ Moore got pissed and was throwing his arms up, and then he said, I can't act like that. I can't really. He didn't say, no, that wasn't nothing directed toward Caleb. He simply said, I can't show that emotion like that, right? And then a couple of weeks ago, he walks off the field in mid-play. And now all of a sudden, I guarantee you there's more to the story. DJ Moore was one of those players that walked in there and said, hey, we want him benched. No doubt in my mind. I think DJ Moore's a good receiver. I really do. But there's some problems there. And, again, you couple that with Caleb Williams and the pouting and the woe is me and drawing attention to himself with all the antics he does. Like, if a man wants to carry a purse, guys, hey, more power to you, man. Who the hell am I to tell you how to live your life, right? That's how I've always looked at it. Can we be completely transparent here for a second? I have gay friends. I have gay family. That stuff doesn't bother me, man. It's not my place to tell someone else how to live, right? So when we talk about these things of carrying the pink purse, painting his nails pink, and doing the little, feminine looking dance in the stands and this and that. That's not to say, oh, he's one of those people. No, that's not how I operate. And anyone who hates on people like that, I'm sorry, I don't have anything for you, man. The point is, how is the locker room going to respond to a leader that is trying to draw attention to himself? That's the whole point of that conversation for me. That's what it is. And let me give you an example. Jim Harbaugh was mocked up this week, right? He was mocked up. I don't know who they played, but watch how he is leading that team and responding to Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, right? He kept calling him beast, right? Lowering his head and fighting for extra yards. And you don't see Justin Herbert whining. Or when was the last time you heard Justin Herbert come out and talk trash about an opponent and draw attention to himself? Or do something all glamorous, put lipstick on and try to draw attention to himself, right? Telling you, man, this is an alpha league. And if you think for a second that that's not going to affect the way other players play for you, or here's another big thing, undermine you behind the scenes talking about you, that's going on too, right? I'm in business. Trust me, that's a real thing. If you don't have unity and the competition is neck and neck, you're going to get your ass kicked in whatever profession it is you're doing. Period. Case closed. So that was the whole purpose with the Caleb Williams stuff. And again, generational talent, great arm. I think he's got good accuracy, especially on the run. He could throw some dots on the run. Good arm strength, great mobility, able to create those secondary plays. None of that means anything if those other 10 guys on the field aren't going to play for you. And it sounds like they're already kind of giving up on him in the locker room, allegedly. So I don't know if that makes sense or not. Didn't plan on going all the way into that direction, but here we are. For those of you listening on the pod, that's going to do it for hour one. We'll see you on the other side for hour two. Appreciate y'all.